welcome you to our workshop this afternoon. My name is Julie Langrer. I'm an attorney with the Department of Procurement Services. And on behalf of Mayor Rahm Emanuel and our new Chief Procurement Officer, Shannon Andrews, we'd like to welcome you to this workshop on doing business with the city, procurement fundamentals. So we've handed out a PowerPoint presentation to everyone who's in attendance. For those of you online, the slides will be streamed for you. If you have any questions, I just ask that you hold them to the end. I'm happy to answer any general questions you might have about our procurement process. However, any questions that are specific to a solicitation that you're interested in bidding on, I'm unable to answer in the interest of competition. So we're going to dive right in. So today this is what we're going to discuss. I'm going to give you our mission statement. We're going to discuss some of the laws governing the procurement process. We're going to talk about some procurement terms that are common when doing business with the city. We're going to go over the types of procurement that are common at the city, the types of certification we have. We have a separate workshop on certification, so I'm just going to give an overview of the various types we have. I'm going to talk about contract monitoring and compliance, our programs and bid incentives, and then we'll give you some information about what you can find on our website, and I'll leave it open to questions and answers. So for our mission, the Department of Procurement Services is the contracting authority for the procurement of goods and services for the city of Chicago. We pledge to work together as a team and with our customers to guarantee an open, fair, and timely process by establishing, communicating, and enforcing superior business practices. And integrity, public trust, and the law are our guiding principles. So when you're doing business for the city, sometimes it may seem that our procurement process is a little overly complicated, but there are reasons for our madness and how we do things that we do. Our procurements are governed by city ordinance as well as state law. So the Municipal Purchasing Act is the state statute that governs all of our purchases. In addition, Chapter 292 of the Municipal Code of Chicago lists various regulations that we have to comply with when we are procuring goods and services for the city. So all of our solicitation documents and all of our contracts we enter into have to comply with state law as well as the city ordinances. DPS uses some terms and conditions that if you're not familiar with doing business with a government entity might sound a little unfamiliar, or if you've never done business before, if you're a new firm, they might sound unfamiliar. But if you're interested in doing business with us, it's helpful to become familiar with these different terms so that when you see a bid package, you understand what we're talking about. So I just wanted to note that we provide a checklist for all bidders in every bid package. So it's important that bidders review all the documents in a bid package so that you know exactly what's in there, you know exactly what's required of any bidder, you don't miss anything that you have to submit because we don't want to have your bid rejected. So there's a checklist in there to help you, and the checklist will list everything that must be submitted with your bid in order for it to be accepted. So we strongly encourage you to take a look at that and make sure you provide all of the requested information. By law, procurements are typically conducted through a competitive process, whether that's competitive bids, RFP, RFQ, and I'll touch on those in a moment. And the reason we do that, not only because it's required by law, but also competition ensures that the city gets the best price, which is important because we are using taxpayer funds, and that we're also getting the best solution for the city. So some terms just to point out for you. If you're not familiar with what a contract is a written agreement between the city of Chicago and a vendor for certain goods or services that are provided by that vendor to the city. There's a number of different forms of contracts depending on what we're entering into. So we have professional service template contracts, we have work service template contracts, we have contracts for commodities, which are typically goods, and we also have construction contracts, we have contracts for architects, so many different types of contracts. But the bid package you receive will have the form contract as part of the bid package, so you'll be able to see all the terms and conditions that will apply to you if you are awarded the contract. And what do I mean by bid package? A bid package is the actual set of documents that we advertise and we use to solicit bids for goods or services that we need. So the bid package will include a draft or a specification or a scope of services for what we need, the goods and services that we need. It'll include our form contract. It'll include a number of affidavits and forms that you have to fill out to provide us with information. And it'll also include a signature page, which is very important that if you submit a bid, it has to be signed and notarized. If it's not, that could result in your bid being rejected. An addendum is a change to the city's bid package or solicitation documents. So if we've advertised an invitation for bid, for example, or a competitive bid, and we realize through questions that come in from our bidders that there's a little bit of just confusion over what we mean by certain parts of our specification, and we've decided that it's in our best interest to clarify that or to change something to make it easier for all of our bidders to submit bids for us. What we'll do is we'll issue an addendum and we'll explain everything that we've changed. It'll be sent out through the same method that we originally advertised the bid, and anyone that has picked up a bid package will be sent a copy. That way we ensure that anyone interested in bidding has equal access to all information. Now, if you're awarded a contract and throughout the term of the contract we need to change something, whether that's we need to change the scope, we need to change the term of the contract, we need to change the compensation, we do that through the form of an amendment or modification to the contract. If you are in the construction industry, you'll typically hear the term change order, and that's the same as what we mean by an amendment or modification. Some other terms, and I'll go into these three each in depth later in the presentation, but just to touch on it. Bids, when I say bids, I mean competitive bids or invitation to bids. Since the majority of the city's contracts are let through competitive bidding, it is the lowest price is the most important factor. So when we have an invitation to bid or a competitive bid out, contract's going to be awarded to the lowest responsible and responsive bidder. What I mean by that is a responsive bidder is someone who meets all of our requirements. So if we've asked for 10 shovels, you've agreed to provide us 10 shovels. If we wanted them to be 10 red shovels with silver handles, you provided us with a bid for 10 red shovels with silver handles. If we've asked you to sign 5 affidavits with your bid and submit them that all have to be notarized, you've provided us with all of those bids. So you have actually provided us with everything we've asked for. You've met all the requirements. You can give us what we need. If you have done that, you're responsive. Responsible means you're actually capable of performing. So in that, we take a look at what's the fitness of the bidder. Are you capable of performing? If we have in the bid certain requirements regarding you need to be in business for so long, or you have to have certain types of professionals or certain types of licenses, this can all impact our determination of whether you're responsive or responsible. Other things we look at is whether you have the financial wherewithal. If we have a project out for bid and you need to be able to procure certain equipment in order to perform, if you are not capable of doing that, you're not going to be able to perform for the city. So those are two determinations we need to make if you're responsive or responsible. If you are and you have the lowest price, you will be awarded the contract. So here are our types of procurement that we do at the city. We have small orders, competitive bids, requests for proposals, requests for qualifications, and JOC contracts or job order contracts. So small orders are for contracts that are for goods or services of less than $100,000. And this is a competitive process, but it's not a formal bid process. And public advertisement isn't required. What we do here is we solicit quotes from telephone, fax, written quotation GPS site. We also have our e-procurement site for small orders as well, where you can bid through e-procurement. MBE and WBE vendors can be solicited first. And it's important to note that MBE WBE compliance is required on all contracts over $10,000. So even if it is a contract for $10,001, if there are a pool of vendors willing and able to perform who are certified, we'll have MBE and WBE goals. And I'll touch on what I mean by MBE WBE goals later in the presentation. So competitive bids is the next type. As I mentioned previously, this is the most common type of solicitation method we use. It is a formal bid solicitation method. So this is for contracts, unless we are authorized otherwise by law, that if it's over $100,000 in estimated value, we'll use this process. These are advertised in the Chicago Sun-Times, in the Daily Classified section. They're also available, you can find about our bids opportunities on our website, in the bid and bond room, which is 103 in City Hall. And also, will this information be available if you are signed up on our DPS alert system? We blast out information about our bids there, as well as bid opportunities can be found on our new e-procurement site. All competitive bids have to be advertised by law for a minimum of 10 days. So typically it's 10 to 30 days depending on the complexity of what we're procuring. So if it's a more complex construction project, we might have a longer bid process. If it's something simpler we're procuring, we might have the minimum 10 days. Some bids do require a bid deposit. So what we mean by that is that we want to ensure that when a bidder puts their bid in with the city, they're not going to turn around and say, just kidding, I don't want to do business with you, because that could result in a waste of time and money for the city. So occasionally we will require bidders to put a bid deposit down with their bid so that we know that the bidder has made an actual commitment that they're going to follow through. Some things to keep in mind about competitive bids. Occasionally there are pre-bid meetings associated with the solicitation. So this could involve a site inspection of the work location after a pre-bid meeting. These are optional typically, but we do encourage you to attend because we do provide a lot of information at the meeting about the procurement process. We go over the specifications so you know exactly what it is we're wanting to buy. We address any concerns you have about the specifications. It's a Q&A process, so if you come to the pre-bid meeting and you've got questions, that is your time to ask them because all the subject matter experts who wrote the spec, as well as the procurement officer who is working on that solicitation, they're going to be there and they'll answer your questions. And it may result in an addendum or clarification being issued. So if people come and there's lots of questions and we've realized that, hey, we need to be more clear in our spec, we'll go back and we'll update our documents and then we can issue an addendum or a clarification so that everybody can bid on the same set of documents and everyone knows exactly what it is we want. If there's not a pre-bid meeting, we still encourage you to review the specification very closely as well as all the contract documents. And there's always going to be a time period listed in the bid package of when you can submit questions. If you have questions, send those to the contract administrator listed in the bid package during that time period available to you. And it's important to only contact that person who's listed as the contact person because if you contact anyone else, you run the risk of having your bid rejected. So you can't just contact anybody you want at the city. So if you know somebody that works in the department, you can't just like call and be like, hey, I've got a question, answer. You have to go to the person identified in the bid documents to answer your questions. Just a little bit more information about the bid documents. I said it before, I keep saying it over and over throughout the course of this workshop. You need to fill in all of the required information. It's a very important component of responsiveness. So if we have a form in there and we've asked you to complete it, you need to complete it and you need to complete all of it. Some documents need to be signed and notarized. If it needs to be notarized, please get it notarized. It needs to be signed. Make sure you signed it. Certain bid documents say in the bid package, if you don't turn it in, signed and completed as requested, your bid can be rejected. So we don't want to reject anybody's bids. We want to make sure that we're giving everyone opportunity to do business with us. So we don't want anyone to make mistakes and forget things that could result in them having their bid rejected. Some information about submitting your bids. If there is a bid deposit, you need to make sure that it's submitted in the proper form. So we can accept cash. It's typically, if we have a bid deposit, it's about 5% of the bid, and normally it is refundable. That might not always be the case, but normally. And as I mentioned, bid deposits are sometimes required, but this is not something that's always the case. If there is a bid fee that's non-refundable, it's for, I can't even read my own slide here. So a non-refundable bid fee may be required for some bid submittals, but that's typically for over $100,000. And last but not least, a very important thing, which is why we have it bold and red font in there, is your bid has to be submitted on time. So if your bid opening is Monday at 11 a.m., you have to submit your bid by Monday at 11 a.m. If you submit it at 11:01, we might not be able to open it because all bids are opened in this room, the bid and bond room 103, at the same time. So we can't have people submitting bids late. So how are competitive bids awarded? First, a determination is made about the bidder's responsiveness and responsibility. So I touched on responsiveness and responsibility previously. Then there'll be a recommendation for award. So the user department will take a look at the bid tab or the list of everyone's bids that they submitted, and they'll say, okay, this bidder looks like they're responsive and responsible, they have the lowest bid, we recommend them. If after that point, the acceptable bid will be packaged, and the bid and contract documents are routed through a signature process. So it's We're city government. There are multiple levels of review to make sure that we're signing contracts that we're supposed to be signing and that no one's signing things that aren't supposed to be signed. So there's various different departments that need to review and sign off on contracts. After that point, if there is a performance or payment bond that's required, we'll ask for that, and the contractor has to submit it to us within a reasonable amount of time. And then after we have that and any insurance required, we will award a contract. So there's a lot of steps involved, but once these steps are completed, lowest responsive and responsible bidder will be awarded the contract. I apologize, I was not on the right slide when I was reading that. So here are the steps again. So it's a lengthy process, but ultimately the thing to take away from the competitive bid process is that if lowest responsive and responsible bidder is awarded the contract, make sure you submit your bid on time. Make sure you ask questions within the question time period to the contract administrator identified in your packet, and make sure that you submit everything that's required with your bid if you'd like your bid to be accepted. So, competitive bids. Before I move on to request for proposals, does anyone have any questions about how competitive bidding works? Okay. I will move into request for proposals then. So request for proposals are typically used for professional services contracts. So by law, there are certain exceptions to competitive bidding, and professional services contracts are one of them. So we use these when the city doesn't have in-house experts. So if we need a certain type of professional service and we don't have anyone at the city to do it, we go out and procure it. And with specialized services, lowest price isn't always the most important thing. Sometimes it could be we want to make sure that there are certain qualifications that the professionals have. We want to make sure that they've been in business for a certain amount of time. There could be other factors, but price is just one factor that's important to the city. So the RFP will define the project scope of services, but it doesn't necessarily detail every single aspect of what we need from you. It requires an evaluation committee. So an evaluation committee that's made up of various different members of City of Chicago departments will review all of the different proposals that we receive based on criteria that are included in the RFP. So if we have 5 criteria listed in there, they will review each proposal individually, and they will evaluate the proposal based on those criteria. And then they will see who is the vendor who can give us the best solution in accordance with those criteria that we identified. So award is ultimately made to the highest rated and ranked respondent versus the lowest responsive responsible bidder. So an example of this is if we need a professional services for someone to design, develop, and support a safety management system. So it's a complex system. We don't know exactly what we need in the system, but we know we need it. We need someone to design it for us, to tell us the best way to do it. We need someone to actually develop it, and we need someone to support it after they build it. That's not something that we might want to just grab an off-the-shelf system. We want something customized for us. So in that case, an RFP is a great solution for the city to go out and procure this, because we can detail everything that's important to us. If we want to make sure that this company we're working with has actually done this for other large units of government or for large corporations, demonstrate that they've built something like this for us. We want to make sure that they have the right people on their team that are actually going to be able to be available for us and answer our questions. So there's more important things than just price at issue with something like this, especially with a safety management system can affect the safety of the city's residents. So RFP is a great resource for us to obtain the services for that. In that case, we would include all of the criteria that are important to us in evaluating. We'd receive proposals, and then the highest rated and ranked respondent would be awarded the contract. Request for qualifications is kind of similar to RFP process, except for, as the name implies, it's all about qualifications. So this is typically used in the A&E or architectural engineering setting. Price is not a factor here. What we're concerned with at RFQs is your qualifications. So we'll solicit qualifications from companies with a high degree of technical expertise and knowledge in certain areas. So we will pre-qualify companies who are a vendor pool, and then through this process, we'll then issue task orders to the vendor pool. The evaluation committee is based on your qualifications and technical competence only, as I mentioned. The fee schedule, or the prices we pay, are typically negotiated after we've already pre-qualified you. So once we know you're qualified, then we'll talk price. And as I mentioned, these are typically used for A&E design contracts. If it's a federally funded contract for architectural engineering services, we have to use this method of procurement as required by law. So just to get a little bit more into what I meant by the pre-qualifying and vendor pool, what we'll do with this process is we will issue something called a master consulting agreement, or an MCA. So anyone who is pre-qualified that we've identified as being qualified to perform the services that we've asked for, you will be awarded an MCA, and then that MCA will then compete on task orders. So then when the user department says, okay, I have a master consulting agreement, I'm ready to actually have them perform, they'll say what they need done, they'll issue a task order that details that out to the vendor pool, and then the vendor pool will submit bids to the user department detailing how they can achieve what the user department needs for that particular task order. And one of the vendor pool companies will be awarded a task order, so kind of a mini contract within the contract. Does anyone have any questions about how that works? Okay. So last but not least, one of our most typical methods of procurement is job order contracts, or JOC. So JOC is a firm fixed price, competitively bid, indefinite quantity contract. It's specifically designed for each department's construction program. So this is used to accomplish small to mid-sized projects. What we use JOC for is when we don't want to go out and bid every single construction contract. So let's say we have like a ton of roofing work we need to do. We don't want to have to bid out every single different house that needs a roof done. What we'll do is we'll have a JOC contract. And general contractors are solicited to respond to the JOC specification that'll contain a unit price book. And in the price book are various different construction tasks listed, with a description of what the task is, a unit of measure, and a unit price for each task. And then the contractor is going to offer their most favorable adjustment to those different prices listed in the unit price book. And by adjustment, I mean they'll factor in their overhead, they'll factor in their profit, they'll factor in anything else outside of what that cost is, and that's what they're going to bid for us. So the value of the JOC contract is going to depend on the departmental needs and budget, but there's no necessarily guarantee within a JOC contract of how much you're going to make on the contract, because it's all going to depend on what the department needs throughout the term. So if we anticipate having 300 roofs, you might end up having 100 roofs, but it's all going to depend on the performance throughout the contract. But important thing to keep in mind is there is a price book that you're bidding an adjustment factor on with JOC. Okay, one thing I want to touch on before I shift gears into certification and MBE WBE compliance is economic disclosure statement. So an EDS is something that all bidders have to complete, all of our contractors have to complete, and it addresses the disclosure of ownership. So this is something that you fill out online. And as I mentioned, it's mandatory for most solicitations. In addition to the bidder themselves, any legal entity that owns the bidder, directly, indirectly, or with 7.5% or more, interest, directly or indirectly in the applicant firm, they also have to complete an EDS. So we're not only interested in the ownership of the bidder, we want to know who owns the bidder. So this is important to the city because we want to make sure that we're complying with our ethics ordinance, with any state and federal ethics requirements regarding who owns the firms. We don't want to enter into business with a firm that's debarred. We don't want to enter into a business with a firm that's been suspended by another government agency. So that's why we ask for this. So in addition to who owns it, the EDS also requires you to fill out information such as, do you owe any debts to the city? Who are your employees? Do you have any employees working for the city? So there's various things you have to fill out. There are instructions included with the bid package, so you'll know how to fill it out. But I just wanted to make sure that everyone's at least aware of economic disclosure statements, or EDSs, because it's an important component of the procurement process of the city. Okay, so does anyone have any questions about the types of procurement we do at the city before I switch gears? Okay, then I'm going to dive into a brief overview of certification and compliance issues. So we have a separate workshop that just talks about certification. So I'm not going to go into all of the requirements for certification or how to become certified, but I do want to make sure that you're aware of our various certification programs. So we have an MBE and WBE program, which is Minority and Women-Owned Business Enterprise program for construction and non-construction. There's also a new program for businesses that are business enterprises owned or operated by people with disabilities. Another new program, veteran-owned business enterprises. And then there are two federal programs, the DBE and ACDBE programs. DBE is disadvantaged business enterprises, and ACDBE is airport concession disadvantaged enterprises. The basic eligibility requirements are fairly similar for all of these programs. The business has to be at least 51% or more owned by an eligible individual. So if you're an MBE applicant, you need to be a minority, meeting the definition of minority from our certification rules. You have to own and control the business, and the business has to be independent, meaning it doesn't rely on any other businesses or individuals, and it has to be viable, which means you are actually ready and able to perform for the city. If you meet those requirements and you've applied, then you may be certified in one of these different categories. One thing with the BEPD program, it has to be at least 51% owned or controlled by individuals with disabilities versus minority or disadvantaged or women-owned or veteran-owned businesses. So if you're interested in being certified, I strongly encourage you to attend the certification workshop because they go into a lot of detail about how to do it. They walk you through the C2 system on how to apply, and it's a very helpful workshop. Also, I encourage you to check out our website. There is a tab under DPS's website about how to become certified. There's a lot of helpful information in there. I also encourage you to take a look at our certification regulations for construction and non-construction because that details all of the requirements to be certified. So, the authority for our certification programs. All of these programs are based on ordinance or federal law. So our MBE, WBE construction program is under 292-650 of the Municipal Code of Chicago, and the non-construction program is 292-420. The DBE program is 49 CFR Part 29, and that sets forth all the federal requirements for the DBE program. And not listed on here, but if you're interested in ACDBE, it's 49 CFR Part 23. So all of our rules, all of our requirements, we don't just pull them out of our hat. They come from city ordinance. So city council has passed these ordinances. They set forth all the requirements for our programs. And the Department of Procurement Services is responsible for ensuring the integrity of the program. So we go through and we make sure that we are certifying firms that are actually meeting those requirements. Okay, so MBE, WBE Participation. Earlier in the workshop, I mentioned MBE, WBE goals. So the city has aspirational goals for both our construction and non-construction programs. That means that when we advertise a solicitation for something that we're purchasing, we're going to take a look at all of the certified firms out there who can perform any of the tasks that are needed on those contracts. And then based on that, we will calculate a certain percentage of the contract that we think needs to be performed by MBE or WBE firms. So there'll be two goals. There'll be an MBE goal and a WBE goal. And in order to have your bid accepted, you need to prove to us through your compliance plan, which is there's schedules included in the bid package that you have to complete. You have to prove to us that you're committing to have a certain percentage of the work performed by MBEs or WBEs that are certified by the city or Cook County, because we have a reciprocity agreement with Cook County, so we'll accept Cook County certifications in addition to city. If you can't meet MBE and WBE goals for some reason, you can also demonstrate compliance through good faith efforts. But what we mean by that is you actually have to prove to us that you tried to meet the goals. It's not enough to just say I couldn't. You have to show us that you made attempts. You have to show us you tried to contact our assist agencies. You did outreach. You solicited firms that are certified you found in the directory. You put advertisements out in any known industry places that you would advertise. Tell us how you tried to meet the goal. And that if you have done that, we'll find that you met your good faith efforts. Otherwise, you have to have, you have to have your compliance plan submitted to us that demonstrates you're making a commitment that meets or exceeds the MBE or WBE goals. So the goals can be met through a number of ways. Direct participation, meaning that the subcontractor itself or the prime contractor is performing and getting credit for their performance. You can form a joint venture with a certified firm. You can use MBE, WBE subcontractors, as I mentioned. But the one thing to keep in mind is it's not just using an MBE or WBE firm. the MBE or WBE firm actually has to perform a commercially useful function. And what do I mean by the commercially useful function? Well, commercially useful function means that the certified firm actually performs and is responsible for the execution of a distinct element of the work of the contract. And that's carried out by actually performing, managing, and supervising the work involved. So you actually have to be responsible with fulfilling the responsibilities of the work. So you can't just be a pass-through company. You can't just be like, oh yeah, I have a contract, but I'm going to hire somebody else to do it and just funnel the money through. That doesn't count. You actually have to be performing in the area you're certified. So if you are certified as an electrical contractor on a construction project, and someone submits a bid and says, oh, the goal is 20%, 5% of that I'm going to use ABC firm, who's an electrical contractor certified with the city. You're not going to get credit if the electrical contractor is then doing, plumbing work, because they're not certified as a plumbing firm. You're going to get credit for having them do electrical contracting work. Does that make sense? Okay. So we have a certified firm directory on our website. If you are bidding on a project and you're trying to find firms that are certified, it's a great resource for you to go and look up firms. You'll be able to see all the different firms that are certified in different areas that you might need on your particular contract. We also have a various number of resources available to be able to connect primes with certified firms. One thing to keep in mind is the contractor is not entitled to a reduction or a waiver of MBE or WBE goals during the performance of the contract after substantial completion, at the time of contract closeout, or at any time really. So once you've entered into a contract, if you've made commitments of certain MBE and WBE commitments, you need to meet them. Otherwise, you need to ask the CPO for approval of a reduction or waiver, and that is not a given. In order to receive a reduction or a waiver, however, you have to prove that you have made good faith efforts to achieve your goals, so that you have actually tried to work with a contractor, they lost their certification, or you tried to solicit so many firms and all of them backed out on you. You have to explain to us why you weren't able to meet your commitments, because there are certain penalties associated with failing to meet MBE and WBE goals. So it's important that if you're meeting commitments, we want to make sure that our MBE WBE community is actually benefiting from them and actually performing work on your contract. Okay. I'm going to skip ahead and go back to that slide. So how do you achieve compliance? I already mentioned it once, but just want to go over again. So you can achieve it in a number of ways. The prime contractor can be an MBE or WBE. You can joint venture. So the prime contractor can form a joint venture with a certified MBE or WBE. You can subcontract a portion of the work to one or more MBE or WBEs. Or you can purchase materials that are used in the performance of your contract with one or more MBEs or WBEs. If it's a federal contract, or federally funded contract, we'll have DBE goals instead of MBE and WBE. It's a different program, and in that case, it would be the same, but for DBEs. Okay, jumping back to this slide. Contract monitoring compliance. So the Department of Procurement Services, in addition to conducting the competitive procurement processes I mentioned before, in addition to certifying firms, in addition to setting contract goals and monitoring compliance, there's other aspects of compliance besides just MBE and WBE goals. So we monitor those. We make sure our contractors are complying with the commitments they made to have MBE, WBEs, or DBEs, as the case may be, performed. But we also have Chicago residency requirements and EEO requirements on construction contracts, and our department is responsible for monitoring that. So for the Chicago residency ordinance, this applies to construction contracts valued at $100,000 or more. So if you are bidding on a contract $100,000 or more, you have to have at least 50% of the total labor hours performed by city residents. And you have to have 7.5% of the hours performed by project area residents. This is a requirement based from ordinance that was passed by City Council 292-330. This is an ordinance that is designed to provide opportunities for city residents and project area residents. So we want to make sure that if we are building something within the city, that our prime contractors are not only employing city residents, but also employing residents who live in the area where the project's being built. That's very important to City Council, and it's important to DPS. So that is something that we monitor and ensure compliance with. There's also equal employment opportunities. This is designed to promote the equality of opportunity for minority and female personnel on city-funded construction contracts. So when you're bidding on a construction contract, there'll be an award criteria formula that you have to complete. It's easier to explain if you see it in person. I don't have one handy on me, but basically there will be different trades. So journey workers, laborers, trainees, and you're going to commit to having a certain percentage of the labor hours being performed by minority and women workers in those categories. And based on those commitments, your bid is adjusted or lowered, and you'll have an award criteria figure. And that award criteria figure is how we evaluate construction bids, not factoring in any other bid incentives. So the numbers you plug into your award criteria figure, however, those commitments, we have to make sure that you're meeting those commitments. So if you said you're going to have 10% of the labor hours performed by women journey workers, we're going to make sure at contract closeout that 10% of the labor hours were actually performed by women journey workers. Okay. So some reporting requirements to keep in mind. Ways we actually do monitor this is through contractor reporting. So prime contractors have to submit a variety of things. They have to submit monthly subcontractor payment certification forms, weekly certified payrolls, and waivers of lien. So by waivers of lien, I mean once they have paid their subcontractor, so we want a waiver of lien so that they don't put a lien on the city property. So it's basically saying, yes, I've been paid, I verify I've been paid. Okay, so last thing I want to quickly go over, because we have a whole other workshop dedicated to discussing all of these different programs and incentives. I wanted to touch on them because when you're bidding on city projects, there are a number of programs and bid incentives that could apply to your bid. So our programs are the Small Business Initiative, or SBI program, the Mid-Sized Business Initiative, which is the MBI program, a new non-construction MBI program. We also have a diversity credit program, a target market program, a mentor protege program, and a phased graduation program. So quickly touching on each of these. The Small Business Initiative, or SBI program for construction. So constructions that are $3 million and less, if we've determined that it's an appropriate contract for the SBI contract, it'll be labeled as SBI. And what that means is that only small bidders are allowed to bid on the project. So there's two tiers. One is $2 million and less, and one is $3 to $2 million. For the $2 to $3 million, you cannot be any larger than the size standards you would need to meet to be certified as an MBE or WBE. For the $2 million and less, you can be no larger than half of that size standard. And the reason for this program is to be able to provide opportunities for our small businesses so that they're on a level playing field with other businesses of the same size versus trying to compete with some of the big guys. The MBI program is similar, but MBI for construction is $3 to $10 million as one phase and $10 to $20 million. So we will identify certain projects as MBI projects, and in order to bid on these, you can't be any bigger than a mid-sized business. So that means either no more than 1.5 size standards for certification for the $3 to $10 million bracket, and no more than 2 times the certification size standards for the $10 to $20 million bracket. So again, that's designed for our small and mid-sized businesses so that they're on a level playing field for these construction contracts. The non-construction MBI program is similar, but it's for non-construction contracts. The target market program is a non-construction program. And one thing to keep in mind about target market program is if you want to bid on this, you have to be certified as an MBE or WBE firm. Only MBEs and WBEs are eligible to bid on target market projects. The Diversity Credit Program is a great program to encourage our prime contractors to utilize our certified firms, not just on city projects, but on private sector contracts, so anything that's not funded by the city. So if a certain contract, private sector contract doesn't have any sort of MBE or WBE goals associated with it, but the prime contractor decides to utilize a certified firm anyway, they can apply to the city to earn credit for a future city contract. So I encourage you to check out the rules if you're interested in this, but it ultimately allows the prime contractor to earn a credit towards future MBE, WBE goals by working with MBE, WBEs on non-city projects. The Mentor Protege program is a great program to encourage our prime contractors or other subcontractors to mentor smaller firms. So we want primes to mentor our MBE WBE community, or we want MBEs, WBEs that have a lot of experience to mentor other smaller MBEs and WBEs. If you do so, you're eligible for a bid incentive, and you also can earn participation credit towards your MBE and WBE goals through the use of the program. Phase graduation program is a great program too so certification, when you're being certified, there's certain size standards. There's size standards for your business size based on your gross receipts, as well as how many employees you have. And there's also, for construction, there is personal net worth limit. So you can't have, when you add up all your assets and you deduct any debts you might have, that's your personal net worth, and it can't exceed a certain amount. And typically, if you're above that amount, you're not eligible for certification. However, once you're certified, if throughout the time you're certified, you've grown, which is exactly what we want you to do in the certification program, and you now exceed it, we don't want to just kick you out of the program. So there's a phased graduation program you can participate in. So for 3 years after you've hit those limits and you can no longer be considered a participating business, you're considered a participating eligible business, and you'll receive partial credit. So certified firms get 100% credit for their work. Participating established businesses in the phased graduation credit program get 75% for their first year of the program, 50% for the second year, and 25% for the third year. So that allows a firm 3 more years to still participate in the program through the phased graduation program before they're no longer part of the firm. Part of the certification program. Bid incentives. We have a ton of bid incentives, and these are really great opportunities for all interested businesses that want to bid on city projects. So what an incentive is we're trying to encourage firms to either take certain action or avoid certain action. So for example, with our veteran-owned subcontractor utilization incentive, we want to encourage firms to use firms that are certified as VBEs, or veteran-owned business enterprises. So we provide an incentive, which is an artificial price reduction on their bid if they commit to utilizing VBEs on the construction contract. So let's say that they decide to utilize 2% of the labor hours are going to be performed by VBEs. That might make them eligible for a 0.5% bid incentive. That might not sound like a lot, but if you're reducing your bid by 0.5%, that might just bring you low enough to beat whoever was the next lowest bid. And some of these you can use together. Not all of them, so you can't use the 2 veteran ones together, but let's say you're going to use an apprentice who is a graduate of City College's Chicago construction program, and you've entered into a mentor-protege program, and you've made great EEO commitments, and your project area subcontractor utilization, you're going to use subcontractors from the project area you're working in. Once you add those up, you can have a substantial incentive or bid reduction for the purpose of evaluation, so that when you're bidding against other bidders, your price is artificially lowered just to evaluate, but the contract value, if you're awarded a contract, is what you actually bid on it. So I tried to go through a slide I usually do an hour presentation on in about 5 minutes, so I hope that made sense. Does anybody have any questions about this before I move on? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sure. So the question was about how the phased graduation program worked with the 75, 20, 50, 25% tiers. So when you have MBE, WBE goals, the credit is earned pretty much dollar for dollar for the amount of work performed by MBE, WBEs. So if you're a certified firm, you get 100% credit for every dollar earned. But if you're in the phased graduation program, we're only going to take 75% of that. And then in the second year, we'll take 50% of that. And the third year, we'll take 25% of that. So a prime contractor can still earn credit through the performance of a firm that's in the phased graduation program. It's just not going to be the same amount of credit earned as a firm that has not exceeded the size standards or personal net worth limit. Okay. Mm-hmm. Sure. So the way the mentor-protege program works is you would need to team up with a mentor or a protege, however is appropriate for your situation. And if you're bidding on a project, the prime contractor would need to notify us in their solicitation documents that they're participating in the mentor-protege program. So they'll have to submit a signed mentor-protege agreement that details exactly who the prime is, who the mentor is, what needs the protege has. So the protege, by that I mean the MBE, WBE firm that needs assistance. So do they need financial assistance? Do they need assistance with how to structure their firm's management to best handle projects that they're going to enter into? Whatever the case may be. And it's also going to detail what the mentor is going to do. So the mentor is agreeing to meet with the protege 2 times a week for an hour to discuss X, Y, Z. Give us that agreement. Once the CPO approves it, if you've won the contract, you can earn participation credit throughout the term of the contract because of your participation. We encourage firms that are interested in this to reach out to primes, and they can submit as many mentor-protege agreements on as many bids as they want. However, you can only earn credit if you win the bid, and you can only get the incentive if your bid is the lowest. But we encourage firms to participate in the program even if they're not going to be earning credit or getting the incentive, because it's a great opportunity for smaller firms to benefit from larger established firms, and for larger established firms to be able to help build up the smaller firms that are growing and developing in the community. I hope that answered your question. Okay.
So, for example, I'm a startup.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to work with you.
Mm-hmm.
Where would I find the information? How do I go about it?
So we have all of our program rules are on our website. So you can find the template agreement and all the rules of how you would need to participate. We have 2 main events a year, which are vendor fair, and we also have a construction summit. So that's a great networking opportunity because we have a lot of prime contractors come, as well as other government agencies that can talk about different upcoming opportunities. We also partner with a number of assist agencies throughout the different areas of Chicago, and they're a great resource for firms that are certified or want to be certified and can connect firms together. So those are some resources to find someone to partner with. So I'm just going to sum up this workshop with giving you some information of what you can find on our website. It's a really great tool. You can find any awarded contract and modification. They're all posted on our website. So if you're interested in getting familiar with what the scopes are like or terms and conditions are like for something you're interested in bidding on, it's helpful to go and search our contracts that are already awarded. You can see payments that are made to all of our contractors. You just search the contractor name and it'll pop up what contracts are awarded, and you can see all the payments made. You can see the bid tabs. So if you bid on something and you lost and you want to know who the lowest bidder was and what their bid was, you can search bid tabs and you can see all the bids because it's all publicly disclosed. You can find all of our weekly bid opportunities. So all of our competitive bids, RFPs, RFQs, they're all posted on our website. There's a directory of all of our certified firms and MBs and WBEs that's searchable. You can find information about all of the bid incentives that I rushed through very quickly, but all of our rules are up there, as well as all of our regulations, including certification regulations. And our website's listed up here, cityofchicago.org/procurement. We also have a number of resources. There we go. Through social media. In addition to our website, you can find us on YouTube. These workshops are recorded, so my voice is recorded as well as the slides, and they're available on YouTube. So if you ever want to go back and listen, you can find us on YouTube. We have a Twitter presence at Chicago DPS, and we also have a Facebook page. It's facebook.com/Chicago DPS. We also have a number of different workshops. Our workshop schedule is located on our website. We have workshops on how to become certified. We have workshops on, I'm like blanking on all of our workshops we have. We have a number of workshops, so they're very helpful. I think we have a flyer out there as well. But there's a number of great great resources on our website as well. One thing I didn't mention that we also have on our website is we have a buying plan. If you're interested in doing business with the city, you're trying to get an idea of what we buy, take a look at our buying plan. It's a 18-month forecast of what all of our departments are going to be purchasing. So we ask every department to tell us, what do you plan on buying in the next quarter or in the next year? and they'll give us their anticipated date of when they want to buy whatever it is they need. We also ask all of our sister agencies to give us that information, and that's in the buying plan. So you can kind of get an idea of, if you are a janitorial services company and you want to do business with the city, you can kind of get an idea of when we're going to go out to bid for that type of contract. So it's another great resource on our website. So that's everything I have for you for this workshop. Thank you very much for attending. If you have any questions for me, I'm happy to stick around and answer questions, or I can pass the microphone around if you have any. I'll also give you one of my cards, so if you have questions, you can follow up with me via email or phone. For those of you listening, my email address is julie.langrer@cityofchicago.org. That's julie.langrer@cityofchicago.org. Again, thank you. Anyone have any questions?
How long typically is this certification process applying?
Sure. The question was how long the certification process works. So it depends on what you're applying for certification for. The DBE program has different requirements than the WBE program. The timeline is triggered when you give us a complete application, so that depends on what we get. So if you submit us an application and we're missing documents, or we have a lot of questions about the documents we had, it can take a while. We try to keep it, I think, under 90 days to 120 days, but it depends on the completeness of the application we receive. But we have a team of certification officers that work very diligently to work through certification applications and are always available for any questions if they arise throughout the process. Good question. I don't necessarily think there is a common type of procurement. It really just depends on the Department of Technology's needs, or DO-IT's need, innovation and technology. I'd recommend taking a look at the buying plan, honestly. That probably has the best information about what they've been purchasing recently. Any other questions? Okay. Okay. That's a good question. I don't actually have an answer for you. With certified firms, you'd probably be able to tell by searching the directory to see if there's certain areas where there's not a lot of certified firms. With the vendor pool in general, though, I'd have to look at a contract by contract to see how many bids we received. I don't know that off the top of my head, unfortunately. Okay, thanks everyone.